Hey, Matthew. Okay, so I started recording. Like I said last week, we're kind of cutting down on the length of the lectures. We're on the downward path now. Hopefully you have been working hard on your essays. Does anyone have any questions about last week's lecture or the essay or anything else before we get started on today's stuff?
No, not from me.
No, I'm good to
No.
go.
No? Oh, cool. Excellent. So as I say, I gave you a quick overview of what we were doing a few weeks ago. We broke the back of the content and we're now down to controls compliance. Now, before we do this, I'll remind you again that there's a whole bunch of stuff on Moodle that I expect you to know about legislation. So I haven't covered it because this is only a 10 credit module and I'm assuming that you've covered it elsewhere. So again, all the stuff on Moodle just below compliance. It's all marked with a hash, and I expect you to know this stuff. Stuff with the asterisks is just there if you're interested in it. But I expect you to know this stuff, and I'm expecting references to things like GDPR in the report, because it would be hard to create a report of this type without mentioning things like GDPR and health and safety and copyright and stuff. Okay, so just a reminder about that if it had slipped your mind. Other than that, like I say, we've broken the back of most of the stuff. So we've done governance, we've done risk, we've taken a detour into the IT frameworks for doing those kinds of things. So we've looked at COBIT and we've looked at ITIL. And what we have left in this is the C from GRC, compliance. But actually today we're not going to start with compliance. For a lot of people, compliance comes afterwards. And what they actually start off with are controls. Very simply, controls are how we want to look after our organisation. They are things that we might want to do to make sure that the organisation is working well. There may be, for example, legislation to cover how quickly you would have to refund someone if they bought something online. That's compliance and you have to do it. But it might be that as part of your internal frameworks, you might set a different number. You might be that you want to provide excellent customer service, excuse me, so you might want to refund people quicker. Or it might be that your company is in such a state that you literally can't afford to do that, so you wait until the last possible day to do the refund. It might be that you worry about who has the authority to write checks. And I know nobody writes checks these days, but you can use write checks as a replacement for transferring money. Or if you prefer, giving out contracts, doing procurement. After all, it's not like someone at Westminster would, for example, give a contract for PPE to their neighbour. That would just be silly and nobody would ever stand for that. And of course, I can't find it now. This was going to be the fantastic reveal where I showed you that at Westminster, the Westminster Health Minister had given a contract for PPE to his neighbour. It was a landlord of his local pub. That was his sole experience in healthcare or PPE. But he did have the advantage of having the WhatsApp number for the English Health Secretary, and so got a contract to produce vaccine. There may just be a slight conflict of interest there. There may be an issue with how that contract was awarded. Not only is that a control issue, that's a compliance issue. That should never happen. And one of the reasons for putting in controls is so that you don't get to the point where compliance becomes an issue. So for a lot of organizations, they will put these controls in place and they will make sure that they have a clear view of what's happening in their system, a clear view of how their organization should work. So they'll put that in place. They'll put it in place to make sure that they have that extra overview, that they're not waiting until the point where it becomes an issue where the police have to get involved. Instead, what they have are internal triggers, things that happen when particular processes happen or don't happen, or when a number is reached or a number is not reached, that they follow policy, and something's triggered when the policy isn't followed. So that's got a lot of benefits. It means that you're on control of your organization. It means you understand what's happening. It means that you get a good overview of how people and departments and sections and organizations are working. And you can take action sooner rather than later. And it's the same with any problem. The sooner you can take action, the sooner you can fix it, the better. And again, one of the questions I often get, although not today, because you guys are all being very quiet today. One of the questions I often get is, well, yeah, no, fair enough, I can understand that, but it's not going to be my day-to-day, is it? I'm not going to be involved in this. I'm not going to have any involvement in doing any of this. And of course, the exact opposite is true. We are IT people. And if you've got a control, for example, that says nobody in the accounts department can pay anyone more than £250 without it being signed off by someone else, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think they are going to hire somebody else to sit in the accounts department and look at every transaction that goes through and check whether there's been two people signed that off when the sums reach a certain amount? Or do you think they're going to come to IT and go, hello, can you create a report for us, please? Here are the parameters. We want you to look at every invoice where it's been more than £250 and only had one person sign it off. Can I have it in my desk in the morning, please? Of course it's going to be us. We know the systems. We know how to work the systems. We know how to change the systems. We know how to create those kinds of reports. We know what's involved in doing that kind of thing. So as with most things these days, They're not done manually. They're done automatically, and that's where we come in. So as well as understanding them, as well as knowing about them, as well as complying with them ourselves, we will be intimately involved in creating them, monitoring them, and ensuring that they work properly. So we've got different types of control. First one we want to look at is preventative control. So it's the sort of thing that I was just talking about. Don't have the opportunity for your employees to be in a place where they can do something wrong. Prevent them doing it in the first place. Prevent a payment more than £250 if they don't have the rights to do it. For you guys in your cybersecurity things, preventative controls are what you do on a day-to-day basis. You're all logged on to the UWS system. You certainly don't get access to my stuff. Come to that, I don't get access to your stuff either. There are preventative controls in place to ensure that we can't access each other's things. So, particularly in IT, we use preventative controls all the time. What systems can you get access to? What data can you get access to? Do you only have access to view, or can you alter? So are you read or read write? And it doesn't take too much thought to understand how that might extend itself out into other parts of the organization. Signing checks, taking a car out of the motor pool, ordering an office to be painted. It could be anything. But you have to decide who is it that has that power to do it. And if you don't have that power, then you should be stopped. In other words, you need the right people to have the right access to the right systems at the right time. You need people to have access to the systems they need to do their job. And actually not allowing them that can actually be worse than stopping people who don't have access. But the best place to be is where the people that we know need access get that access. Sorry, I thought I just silenced everything. If we don't have that in there, it makes it very easy for bad behavior to be not just allowed, but sometimes ingrained in the organization. Yeah, I don't have time to double check. So what to do is get all these payments ready for me, and I'll come in at the end of the day and just go enter, 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 enter. That's an incredibly bad way of doing it. You've followed the process. Someone has created the money transfer, someone else has signed it off, but I haven't actually read it. IT can help in that kind of thing as well. It would be very unusual for somebody to approve 30 money transfers in 30 seconds. So maybe that's another rule that can be built in to your systems. The problem that you always have is that balance again. So you want those checks and balances. You want it that there isn't one place and only one place where something can be done. You always want there to be multiple people checking in things, and that's difficult in a smaller organization. You might not have the manpower. You might not have the skills. In a larger organization where you do have the manpower, it becomes really difficult to organize who precisely has the ability to do things. Who is responsible for stopping them? So when a finance clerk moves out of accounts to shipping, who's responsible for stopping their access to the account systems so that they can't do any more account stuff, and giving them access to the delivery stuff? Presumably you guys have a process in there to do that. Presumably it's well laid down that change of department invokes this and this and this and this. Remove rights, add new rights, change which part of the building they're allowed into with their key card, whatever it happens to be. There should be steps in there that are taken when that kind of thing happens. And that shouldn't be ad hoc, that should be thought about beforehand. In the same way as you guys think about all your access controls for any kind of system access. You have to do that for all the processes in an organization. Well, that's preventative. Too many T's for this time in the morning. Preventative. Any questions about that before we move on?
No, all sounds like common sense.
Okay. I'm all right with that.
Okay. In that case, we'll move on to the next one. Remembering, of course, that these kinds of headings, like preventative controls and detective controls, might be the sort of things that are, to take an example from nowhere, a heading in a report that you might be creating. Maybe. So we try and stop things happening, that things always happening. Things go wrong. We know that, we accept it. We don't like it, and we do our best to tackle it if it happens, and that brings us to detective controls. What happens if something we didn't want to happen has happened? We have money in the bank. We want to always ensure that we have a set amount in there because we know that we have payments coming off every day. Same sort of stuff you might do with your own account. My bank texts me if my account drops below a certain amount. Organizations are exactly the same. It might be that you have a control in there that says, if my bank account drops below X amount, send a report to the Director of Finance saying you need to sort this out now. So we decide what it is we want to happen or not want to happen. We write the rules for that, and then we check that these haven't happened. And again, that brings us back to why we are intimately involved in this. If you are a bank or a share trading company doing thousands, tens of thousands, millions of transactions a day, you literally can't have somebody sitting there going, yeah, tick, that was all right, tick, tick, tick. It's going to come down to automated systems. Systems that will check that we haven't done something we shouldn't have done, that we haven't transferred too much money to an overseas account that we're not allowed to do. We can't just stop it, because it could be that one of our customers has doubled their order because they need to bring in more PPE than they were expecting. So suddenly they're transferring twice the amount of money to China that they normally would. So business is fluid, business changes, and it might need to happen. What you might have is a detective control saying, hang on, I know that you've done this, we've noticed you've done this, do you want to check that that's okay? So we have done it, that's fine, but please go check, please make sure this is what you wanted to do. So it gives leeway for things to change on a day-to-day basis, depending on the business needs, the organization's needs. But it just points up things that we might want to keep an eye on. And we might actually then decide that we want to change those. We might want to say, okay, yeah, that's fine. The company's growing, we're ordering more, the exchange rate has changed, so it's costing us. So actually that's okay. What you've got in there is a trigger, is a good idea. but let's set it higher or lower. So that we're still doing that stuff, but we do it at a different level. It also gives some comfort to management to allow staff the space to run the business and to make decisions based on that business, but where major changes will still be flagged up. So you don't want it to be the case that one of your salesmen has suddenly sold twice as much as they normally would, and then they have to hang about while their manager approves it, and the manager's manager approves it, and the board approve it. You want to give them that leeway to actually go and sell your stuff. But you still want to know. You don't want to suddenly find out later on that you're supposed to be making twice as much as you thought you were. So it'll pop up on someone's screen and go, hey, we've checked this out. Have a wee look. Are you okay with this? So we use a lot of detective controls to just look at transactions, look at processes, look at anything that's happened, and just say, are we okay with this? This might be outside the normal range. Doesn't mean there's something wrong, but it's outside what we would normally do, and you probably want to look at it. So you'll get these reports, well, depending on what it is, daily, hourly, immediately. It just depends. And again, doing that manually is just impossible, because there might be some things that you do manually. You might have manual controls, and it might be back when people still sign checks, it might be physically two people having to put their name on a check so that you get that backup happening. But of course, all of that stuff is labor intensive, and as the organization grows, the amount of people you need to do those manual controls, to check those controls, increases. The amount of work they have to do increases, until you get to the point where either you're spending far too much money just doing that, or you have to find smarter ways of doing it. And of course, that's where we come in. We can set up automated controls to check for violations. We know that PCA 468, well, A stands for accounts, 468 stands for the room it's in. Why is the accounts machine accessing personnel files? Shouldn't we make sure that that doesn't happen? I mean, it's entirely possible that it's fine. It could be that the accounts need to send out an expenses check to an employee that's left and physically need their address. So it might be okay. But in normal day-to-day things, accounts wouldn't need personnel information. So that might be into your system, that this machine located in this space used for these types of things only has access to particular functions. And if it accesses anything else, you want to know about it. Depending what it is, you may or may not want to stop it altogether, but you certainly want to know that it's happened. And as is the way of IT, once you have these kinds of systems in place, there's next to no cost to putting in another one. If you have a rule in place that says, don't buy anything over £1,000 without checking. It's a very simple rule, and it might not apply all the time. So if you're sending somebody out to buy sandwiches for a meeting that you're having, £1,000 should certainly cause a problem if they're going to go over that. But if you're sending somebody out to buy the raw materials for the widgets that you're making this month, £1,000 is probably nowhere near what you need. So you can start to become more directed. It isn't just about a limit, it's about who's doing it and in what area they're doing it and the reason for what they're doing. So you can put in more rules depending on what it is you need and actually have them running as required. You can add them in, you can alter them, you can fiddle about with them. And because it's all run automatically, there's less chance that the rules won't be followed. So by automating these systems, it really helps an organization to understand what's going on, and it also gives an early warning system to management to check out when things aren't working the way they would expect them to. Again, doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong, but it might mean they weren't expecting it. So put something in that's automated, it's cheaper, it's better, it's faster. It actually is part of the system, so it's not an add-on, it's not somebody getting a stack of reports and going through them with a highlighter, making sure that they're okay. It's actually integrated into that system already. Everything happens immediately. As soon as a payment's made, it might trigger an alert saying that the payment's to a new person, or it's more than we were expecting, or whatever it happens to be. And it means that we have that audit trail for everything that we do, which, not surprisingly, is hugely helpful for compliance. Because we're not just saying, okay, well, we've done 1 million transactions today, we'll check 1,000 of them, because you can't do 1 million. So we'll check 1,000 of them and make sure they're okay. No, we've checked all 1 million of them. These are the rules that we've set, and if we're happy with those rules, we're happy with all these transactions. And any that broke the rules, we've checked and either accepted with a reason given, or we've simply said, no, let's go and investigate this because this is an issue. Everyone happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the final one then is mitigating controls. What happens when you do find a policy violation? What do you do to fix the problem? And there could be different responses depending on what the problem is. So as I say, you would normally not spend more than £1,000. It's flagged up that we've spent 1,500. Why is that? Well, we've found out that the supplier is going on holiday. We've had to buy extra things to cover us for the time that they're away. Excellent. Write that in, tick it off, done. Why have we suddenly spent £1,500 on this supplier that we've never spent money on before? Oh, I don't know. Who's authorised it? Fred. What's happened to Fred? Oh, weirdly, Fred resigned today. Hang on, I think we better go and check this out. Not only do we check it out, we might want to change how we approach the problem, change how we approach the process, and change how we approach our rules. So we might add in a rule that says, okay, anybody that's put in their notice can no longer transfer money out of the company. Anybody who's put in their notice can no longer have access to computer systems. And I don't know if you've seen some of the news reports. You know, a system administrator gets fired, and the day before they go in and change all the passwords so nobody can get access to the computers anymore. That's the sort of thing that you would change before you fire them. So our mitigating controls look at the problems that we've found and decide how we're going to fix them. And again, these should be set up beforehand. We can't have everything because we can't foresee everything, but we should be thinking about these things beforehand. What is it we will do if this happens? and who has the authority to do it. Because clearly that can't be the same person who has triggered the issue in the first place. It has to be someone else who looks at it and either agrees with it or turns it down. Questions?
I don't have any. All these things just seem to be common sense, don't it? I suppose it's things we take for granted and things we probably like come across, but never think about them.
And that's the thing, most people don't think about them until they don't happen. You see them because they go over the front pages where somebody has ignored the rules. Barings Bank goes into liquidation because a trader hid the losses because he was the only person that had access to the account, and nobody else knew that they were losing millions and millions of pounds. So they should be what you would do on a day-to-day basis, but sadly they're not, which is why some of them have to go into legislation to say, no, actually, if you're running a company, this is allowable, this isn't. But you're right, some of the things should be, I don't like the phrase common sense because in my experience, it's not that common and some of it doesn't make much sense. But they should be fairly standard things that most organizations do. So you probably want to think about them for your case study. You probably want to think about access restrictions for your case study. You probably want to think about why their access should be restricted. And you probably want to think about why implementing these things using an IT system rather than using a manual system isn't a cost for the company, it's actually a saving for the company. Because that might be helpful for some sort of report that you have. Okay, if there's no more questions than that, I have one very short thing that I want to talk about. So, as well as controls, what we also have is a code of conduct. Weirdly, and I've said before that a lot of my things come from the public sector. So here's the councillor's code of conduct for Scotland. If you're a councillor in Scotland, that's your code of conduct, how you relate with other people, with employees, what you have to do at meetings, what happens if you get a gift, all that kind of stuff. And I've said before that I show you these things because as a public sector organisation, they actually have to publish them. And I find it hard getting these things elsewhere. For this one, however, here is a code of conduct for GSK, who are a chemical company. And they actually publish their code of conduct and say what it is they expect from their employees. They say what their values are. Not just the values for the organisation, but how it fits into number 7 there, regulation and law. Because as usual, they're not doing this out of the good of their heart. They're doing it because they can say, no, here's what we expect you to do. So that if an employee goes outside of those lines and it then becomes an issue in law, we can say, no, look, we have promoted these things. This is what we expect people to do. We've said what will happen if you don't follow this code of conduct. So they're a chemical and drug company, and so they have to talk about things like protecting patients. What happens if you create a new drug, how are you going to protect the people that it's given to? How are you going to research that? We spoke before about risk and what you might have to do with a drug. So we said that if you have a risk, sometimes what you have to do is just put the risk at 1. In other words, take the risk. Clearly, the drug companies have to do that all the time. If they come up with an antivirus for COVID-19, they have to give it to somebody. Eventually, at some point, they're going to have to give it to somebody. Now, hopefully, they'll have done an awful lot of work before then to ensure that it's not, that any side effects won't be too bad. But you can't foresee everything. And there's always the chance that when someone's given that drug, they will have a poor outcome. So they have to research ethically. They have policies about gifts and hospitality so that they can't accept things that might influence their decision. They need to make sure that they keep records, so if anything goes wrong, they can prove what they've done, and that's a compliance thing. As you can imagine, drugs companies have to comply with the law and how they do it. And if they suddenly don't have a record of how they tested it, all of their results, and something goes wrong, that's going to be an issue. And what they're saying is that everybody in that organization is a steward of their reputation. If you're working for that company, we expect you to live up to particular standards, to work with integrity and courage in a healthy and safe workplace. And actually, that's now extended out. So this is a more recent development of these types of things. So column 4 there actually extends that out into the wider world. It's about human rights, it's about sustainability, because the green agenda has become far higher, and anybody who doesn't conform to that green agenda will find themselves on the wrong side of pressure from a lot of people. So I think GSK have published this code of conduct when they don't publish many of their other internal documents.
Something's happened.
Not particularly for GSK that I know of, but any other thoughts? They've published it because they don't just want to have this code of conduct. They want to ensure that people know that they have this code of conduct and that this is what they intend living up to. They want to cut off any possible complaint or issue by saying, no, we've done this. This is what we've expected. We've told all our employees, and we're telling you as well that this is what we want people to be like when they work with us. So it's about not just doing the right thing, but being seen to do the right thing. So they've set up a code of conduct for their employees that ensures that they understand what that code of conduct is, and hopefully that they will follow it. And that's a very common thing for organizations. Rather than just saying, yeah, do the right thing, they actually write down what the right thing is, what it is in particular circumstances. So if I go to a meeting and somebody gives me a notepad, I didn't particularly need to notify anybody that I had this. Don't know if you can see it. So IBM gave me a notepad. Very nice of them. It's a nice notepad. I haven't used it yet, but you know, it's lovely. Not only have I not used it yet, I've noticed that the diary on it says it's from 2012, so it shows you how long it is since I've not used it. Giving that to me might be construed as trying to bribe me, but there's a level, and I'd like to think that if somebody was trying to bribe me, it would cost them more than some paper. So that wasn't an issue. I didn't have to declare that I had that. I didn't have to declare that I'd got that from IBM. But here's something else a company gave me. Anybody know what that is?
Is that a laptop?
Yep. It's a Microsoft Surface Pro. Which Microsoft gave me because I do some work with Microsoft. Now, the work that I do hasn't been influenced by that. But to make sure that there's no way that it could be, and no one could go back and go, well, you only did this because, as soon as I was given that, I notified my employers. And I said, look, I've been given this. Can you write it down somewhere just so that people know that I've got it? I'm not trying to hide it. It's not a bribe. It's just something that happened in the course of doing things. And I promise it won't allow it to affect my judgment. So the university said, yep, fine, here you are. Sign this form to say that won't happen. And it's written down somewhere that I've had that and I got it for free and I've promised not to let it affect my judgment. It doesn't mean that it won't. It doesn't mean people won't accuse me of having my judgment affected. But at least I can point to it and say, well, if my judgment was affected, I told everybody right from the start that I had it. So I don't think it has, and I've been upfront about it. There are lots of things that happen on a day-to-day basis where that happens. What if a supplier sends you a calendar? Stick it up on your wall if it's nice enough. But I probably wouldn't feel the need to notify anyone about it. But if a supplier invited me to a Christmas dinner, all expenses paid, with a free bar, yeah, I'd tell somebody. I'd write it down. I'd make sure people knew that that was happening. It may or may not mean I should or shouldn't go, because there may be good reasons for it. It means I get to meet the other people that the supplier is supplying. I get to understand how they're using the equipment or the software, whatever it happens to be. It means I might gather information on a better way to use it for my organization. But people might just see it as a, yeah, well, they paid for you to have your dinner, drink all you and have a night in a hotel, so that's why you went and bought their software. So to get around that, you would write it down somewhere and say, look, I'm doing this. I promise it won't let it affect me. And then it's up to the organization to decide whether or not you have conformed to their code of conduct, whether you have an interest in making something happen. So it's basically a way of ensuring that we understand how we're going to interact with each other. And it's happened again for millennia. Most religions have ways that you should act, what you should and shouldn't do. And that has continued on to the present day for particular organisations. So if you are a lawyer, you have to conform to the Law Society of Scotland's Code of Conduct. If you're a doctor, they have a code of conduct. If you're a teacher, they have a code of conduct. So the idea is that you codify what it is expected of you to actually be a member of that profession, or to do that job, or to be employed by a company. So that there's no doubt, this is what we expect of you, comply or go away. And of course, it's handy to have it written down. It's useful to have it to say, yeah, you've complied or you've not complied. But it's not a way of ensuring that everybody actually. And we spoke right at the start about the people at the top actually setting a standard. So unless people at board level, senior management level, unless they actually do this and conform to this, it won't filter down. And you know that because we've looked at things before. So we talked about Arthur Andersen before. Every one of their accountants had signed up to a code of conduct for being an accountant to say this is what we will and won't do. It didn't stop them not actually doing the accounts properly. It didn't stop them perpetrating a fraud, which means that it didn't stop Arthur Andersen going under as a company. And that happened because the leaders of the organisation said, actually, the company that we are auditing give us quite a lot of money, and we'd like them to keep giving us quite a lot of money. So, just sign it off. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And of course, it wasn't fine. So these codes of conduct are there not just to stop people doing things. They're there to remind people that there's a reason why they are stopped doing things. So this kind of ethos should be promoted all the way through an organisation, starting at the top. And you must tell people what they are, you must enforce those rules, and you have to check the rules. So we're back to governance, risk, and compliance again. Governance of saying this is how we are going to be as an organisation. The risk that people won't do that, and the compliance that you find out and do something about it if they do. And like I say, lots of organisations, lots of professions have these. And I've put a link to the Scottish Councillors Code of Conduct on Moodle. You saw the first page, but it's actually 34 pages long. Do's and don'ts if you are a councillor, covering all these kinds of things. And it's pertinent because it decides whether or not you are an organisation that can be trusted. So the same sort of code of conduct that Scottish councillors follow, there's actually one in place for Westminster government. And you've seen that just in the last week, that includes things to say you cannot bully. The person that bullied said, not I'm sorry for bullying, but I'm sorry if you felt you were bullied. And her boss said, yeah, it's okay. She said she didn't mean to, so I don't care. So I ask you, does that say we won't allow bullying? Or does that say, yeah, we'll excuse it if it's expedient for us to do so? And what then does that say about the organisation and the people running it? Does that say, yes, this is an organisation that we trust and that we want to do business with? Or does it say, well, if they won't even follow their own rules, how can we trust them to follow anything else? So I did say it was a quick presentation. So that's that. Anybody, any questions?
None from me. Sorry, I
Double-
was away from my desk. I was wanting about my headset. So none from me.
Nope. Everybody happy? All right. So again, the idea is to take this and use this as part of your report. So for the case study, you probably want to have a look at these kinds of things. Look at different codes of conduct. See how they are the same and how they're different. Figure out why they're there, and then of course those might be things that you want to recommend to your organization as part of its as part of what you have to do. Okay, so that's us for today. I'll just ask once more, does anyone have any questions before I stop the recording?
No, I'm happy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, in that case I'll stop the recording.